Hello, everyone. This is the Service Binding Operator weekly developer meeting for the June 10th, 2021. And this is my radio voice. Yes, my name is Igor. I'm moderating today, and Baiju is going to take notes. So today we have the discussion. We have a couple of topics. Predrag, do you want to take over and talk about the spec alignment plan?
Yeah, I just want to kind of briefly sketch or share with the group. So there was conversations going on. So we know that we want to become spec aligned for our GA, but so far maybe was not clear. So how we want to achieve it. So you have we have in two possible options basically. One is really to modify our API so that it really becomes eventually the spec API with just the fields and the structure we have there and the group API name. The other approach I would like to propose that we take is that we add the spec API along in parallel to the existing API. And the current architecture is very well suited for this. Namely, we have extract the reconcile logic out of the in a separate pipeline, and in that pipeline we push from stage to stage something what we call context. Context contains all the information needed a binding to happen, so can actually provide you a list of the services, list of the applications, can also provide you access to other resources in the cluster. It also can tell you what is all relevant, what kind of binding needs to be done. So, and since this is an interface, and we have one single implementation of it, which is tailored to our service binding resource, the idea is to provide additional implementation of that context, which will be then kind of suited to the spec service binding resource, and provide the same interface to the pipeline, and then have another controller. Of course, we need to register another controller for that, and we need to a bit restructure the project layout in order to support multi-group controllers. But when this is done, and we have this controller which is watching for events and getting the spec service binding resources into the queue, then the process is practically identical to what we have at the moment. So we're gonna create a context out of the received service binding instance, and then push that context through the pipeline and reconcile on this. The beauty of this is that all the stages are already there, so we can even maybe configure pipeline so that to remove a couple of stages which are really not needed and not part of the spec anyway, like what we have a stage which is about applying a custom naming strategy to the binding keys. Mappings, for example, is not part of the spec anymore. Injecting things as environmental variables. So everything is there. The only thing what we need really to do now in order to practically get support for the spec resources to restructure the projects according to the operator SDK layouts, and this is relatively easy. It's just moving some directories here and there, and creating an additional controller and creating additional context implementation. So that will be my proposal and how I would like to tackle this problem. And the effort is not really big because all the logic is already there, and we can reuse, of course, from that existing context implementation, we can use the most of the code because the most of the code is really overlapping. So what is really different is really how to access a couple of things. There are some things in the resource itself are a bit different place. So questions, ideas, comments?
I would include also that this is the same path that we can take for changes in the API version, right? Because I imagine that you would only change the head of your pipeline, and then you would adapt the pipeline to ingest instead of a version 1.0, version 1.1, or something like that.
Yeah, if we need to support multiple versions of something, that would be
we will, right? So that's that. I think that the design is good enough for what you're proposing and for more. So
I mean, there was also one couple of times we had a question for various people. So we would like to have a GA by the end of this month, hopefully, if everything works well and smooth. A question which popped up a couple of times is, so given that we're gonna GA with the spec API, so and gonna keep the existing API along in the same operator. The question was whether we wanna also move our API from V1 Alpha 1 to something more stable. And my take on this is that I wouldn't do that, because eventually we would either like to deprecate this API and completely remove it once the consumers are migrated to the spec API, but also gives us opportunity to leave that API here and intentionally mark it as alpha, because we can then use that API as a playground to experiment with various new stuff before we submit them to the spec and adapt them to the spec.
I'm sorry, but this is exactly the case that I mentioned, that whenever we move from V1, I think we should, right, practice moving between versions, right, and having we should learn how the mechanics of those updates work, right? Because we are gonna sit in situations where we're gonna have to deal with more than one version, right? And I guess that this is the time, right? So for example, I think that the consolidation of our API would be, for example, moving from V1 Alpha 1 to V1 Alpha 2 in the GA, right? And then guard the update to V1 when we deliver V1, right? So then we are locked with the major versions, right? And then since we have this way that I think that is going to be fail safe to handle upgrades, right, on these versions, this is going to be seamless in the future, right? So I would like us to take the perhaps the time now that we want to get into GA and get into that situation where it's not magic to get into both versions at the same time, right? Because in reality, what is going to happen, it's basically a decision at the beginning of the process, right? Oh, I received a version, right? So Kubernetes already supports multi-version documents, and so we already have all of the tooling for this, right? So given the existence of the tooling for this, I think that we should move to V1 Alpha 2 to mark the GA that we're leaving this V1 Alpha 1 behind, right? Then we can safely deprecate, we don't change. And if we have anyone else now from, for example, IBM, that might be using that version, right? So if we move our efforts to V1 Alpha 2, they will not be affected. They will be affected on their step, and this will on their time. And this is important if we want to give this tool, have this tool as a foundation for other people to build software upon, right?
And we are not breaking the backward compatibility as well, right? Like when Igor is suggesting for the V1 Alpha 1, Alpha 2, we are not removing the APIs from V1 Alpha 1, right?
No, we can break because we are still in Alpha API.
Yeah.
So but that's fine.
But we are going GA. That's why I'm asking, like,
but we are going GA along with our API we have, right? So we would like to also deliver operator understanding the spec API, and the spec API will be the primary one we're going to actually manage and support in the future. And that spec API is, I think, right now V1 Beta 1. but probably at the release time they're gonna maybe even, not sure if they're gonna upgrade this, but it's definitely has higher guarantees in the compatibility than the our API.
Okay.
Our API is, as I mentioned, so it could be at some point deprecated and removed completely if we want to, but also it could stay for various experiments we can perform and to gather experience, and then later or submit good ideas to the spec. That will be my kind of take on this.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep.
So what would be the actionable if we're about to decide anything, or we still need something?
No. I mean, I didn't. I mean, it was kind of more like I wanted to kind of present the idea how to them. I don't think that we need to have any actionable at this point.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we do we have any other question? I don't. Are you finished with the spec alignment for GA, Predrag?
Yes.
Do we have any? You're welcome. Do we have any question that or comment? Still? Nope.
Oh, there's a question
So
from
we
John.
do have John.
There's a question from John in the chat.
Yeah. John said, does this mean the service binding operator can diverge from the spec, as in Red Hat Developer Service Binding Operator issues 843?
I mean, it could if, but we could add some non-spec stuff in our API, so under our group API name, but we shouldn't add additional things on the spec resource. So we should really be 100% compliant there.
So then what should be used in this sort of case, right, would be extensions from the service binding definition, specification itself, right? We should push this sort of things up to the discussion regarding the binding protocol itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You good, John? We can't hear you, but I can.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, cool. Any other question? Nope. Cool. So we still have another topic, which is switch to multi-group project layout and add a new controller watching for service binding.
No, this is not a topic. This is what I added actually as a kind of explanation when I was making the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, so that.
Okay. Sorry, I added everything together in that comment.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we can move then to the other bit from Baiju, issue 826, support for keys containing a dot.
Yeah, let me share my screen and then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This issue was opened few months back. Yeah, last December. So the request was to include dot character in the element. Sorry, which was the attribute in the source key. Yeah, in the source key. So currently, I think we are not allowing that. So there was a few hours back, somebody again pinged whether are we going to support this. I think okay, let me look at my notes here. So I think we can allow these these characters. My thought is like probably we should use the definition from here. That means any character that is mentioned as a valid, because by the way, this key is nothing but anything that is coming from a secret, or it could be another scenario. It could be a config map, right? So in both the definition, see this, if you look at this config map definition, this is the character that is permitted. Each key under data and binary data, this is regarding config map, it must consist of alphanumeric characters plus it's about hyphen, underscore, and dot. So these characters are allowed. Even the same thing with the secret also. Secret also similar sentence. So hyphen, underscore, dot. These characters are allowed. So I think we can. I don't see any problem for us to support that as part of the key, that source key. Anything to add there?
Sure. So should we treat this as a bug? Is this marked as a bug?
Okay.
There's one thing that we should always keep in mind, right? That we use dots to navigate the hierarchy of the data hierarchy, right? And of course, as far as I understand, every place that does that do not allow like the leave to contain a name that contains a dot, because this is ambiguous to the description, right? So for example, in the first line, path is dot status dot trust stored dot secret. If you allow the name to contain dots, what is the name?
No, not there. We are talking about the source key. This part, this component.
But this also is navigating in a structure, because it binds to things in other data structures that contain hierarchies, right? So you're always traversing, as far as I understand, you're always traversing trees with a dot notation, right? And whenever you do that, it becomes like hard to get that. There are some ways. So for example, if you want to have dots, right, we would need to include escaping, right, or perhaps quoting or some other data change to allow that. But this is also a change to the spec, right? Because
to my understanding, while I'm reading the spec and this extension annotations, the source key is just a key. It should not be interpreted anyhow differently. It's not really navigation.
It doesn't it, like, you cannot bind some different, as far as like since I implemented it initially, I remember that source key could get into a value inside a map as well. So you could maybe it was this like this, but I haven't seen that in the recent spec. So we need to double check. This, to be honest. But my understanding is it's just a plain key name. Nothing else. Just remember then, if it's a plain key name, that's fine. But whenever we use this for hierarchy navigation, then we need to consider it more like if this is source key is only a string, not a path, then you can safely assume that is a bug if you don't accept that, unless there is any other limitation from like, for example, do config maps and secrets have difference in the data that you can store in it, or and stuff like that. So other than that, I think that's a bug.
Could you double check with the spec? What is the interpretation of the source key, and then
there is no interpretation. So I already added one issue regarding, okay, there are many other issues that I report along with that. Yeah, not there. I think I added this into that common issues that I started noticing. So this is one of the issue that I marked here. So that means we need to address. So I mean, our current spec is not clarifying regarding what kind of characters are allowed or not. So I just added that.
No, but like, what is important to understand in the spec? What is the semantic of the source key value? Is it a path, or is it just the key name? Is that can you double check in the spec and then come back and write out? I mean, and if it's just the key name, then we can clearly identify this as a bug.
Yeah, spec is not at all mentioning anything about that. It is just saying that there's an entry. That's it. Source key mount an entry from. That's it. They're just giving an example. there is no definition about what should be the value. Nothing. There is no explanation about that. So
Okay, but let's try, then. Would you like to an open issue at the spec just so that we can clarify?
yeah, that's what this issue is in the spec. This 158, but that is including many other issues, not only this part. And yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all from my side. Yeah.
So should we assume that this is a bug and
No, I wouldn't really now assume anything, because I would really like to that we kind of, at least on the spec, will come to the like common agreement. So what is the semantic? And if it's like just the key, then we should modify at least the current spec to reflect that until Vasu's PR eventually get merged, something like that.
okay, cool. So can we put a note in there?
Yeah, so like put a note that we're gonna create an issue there with a question.
I wanted to. It was you, Predrag. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so do we have any questions to Baiju regarding this topic, or you finished, Baiju? Sorry, should have asked that before.
Yeah, I'm finished. I think John added one more topic. We can go to that.
Yes, yes. Cool. So John, I guess you're trying to write that down and stuff. So can you tell us about the working example out of the box plain Kubernetes?
So I was basically trying to write an integration test. And so what I had working locally with my database was something Baiju wrote. I think it was a custom fork of a Postgres operator, if I remember correctly. And I was, and I didn't, maybe my GitHub searching skills aren't very good, but I couldn't really find a easy out of the box backing service provider like Postgres or anything. So I was wondering, maybe I didn't search correctly, or do you guys know if there's something out there that that would work easily?
You're pretty right. So to my knowledge, there is no any service provider which is compliant to the core spec out of the box.
Yes, that's what I assume. Do you think it's because the spec doesn't move fast enough, or do you guys have an idea?
If it's just a simple example, I have something I done as part of my side project. I'll just paste the link here. 1 second. But that's again, I would not consider that's a very realistic example, but something good enough for a demo. That's it. Yeah.
I have something for a demo, and I ended up creating like a mock.
John, do you have any particular like database or operator in mind? I mean, that maybe we could kind of create a PR which will enable, core support, because somebody needs to be first.
Yeah, I was, but I thought there was someone already, and but because all the examples, you have to edit the CRDs or something like that. So it was QB preset. Okay.
No, I mean, the editing of CRDs is one thing we are kind of having as a handy way to add binding hints to the existing CRDs and services in the operators. But the core spec speaks mainly about provision services, which means that your operator or our operator, imagine creating a database being like MySQL or Postgres. It creates the deployment and then in the status part of that deployment puts the practically the name of the secret where the credentials are.
Right.
And so according to the core spec, that will be enough for the operator to find that secret and then inject in the application. So we would need to, modify some operator to does exactly that. I mean, I have seen like operators in the wild creating secrets along in parallel to the deployment, but they're not really adding the secret name to the status part. So that should be relatively easy to achieve.
Right. And like, do you have an idea why it's like adopters or like adoption might be slow, or is it difficult, or people don't want to, or do you have,
really good question. I assume that many people are waiting for spec to become GA so that they can start like really implementing something. That maybe they're just afraid that things can change a bit more than, and so on. They're gonna wait for the final something to start working on. I probably that. Or I mean, like people are maybe not aware of the specs, so maybe we here in the call we could, as I said, submit some PRs. Like I said, so I have seen like some operators creating really secrets with the credentials in parallel to the deployment. So just making connection between two of them, it's not a big deal for that vendor, but it could help a lot for say for service binding.
Yeah. And I remember some discussion about creating maybe some mappings, like a mapping repo, and so the operators wouldn't have to touch their code. And maybe that's a good idea too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I was just surprised that I couldn't find something because I don't know. For me, it seems to be around for a long time. So. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
by the way, there is a lot of discussion going on regarding spec to become, GA, and right now that submitting it to Kubernetes SIG is going on. One of the constraint with respect to that one is that current SIG that we are making part of, that is catalog services, and that scope is very limited to that catalog service. So that need to be expanded further. That is kind of need a lot of approval, I guess, from some core committee or something like that. So once that approval is available, and there is some signature record from all the existing contributors. So once those two blockers are over, I think its spec is in a good shape to become GA. Yeah, so that means it's all this kind of documentation work or formalities is what really need to happen to become a GA now.
Okay, thank you.
Igor, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Yes, I am. So sorry. Like before, there was like a helicopter, I guess, around, so I just muted. Thank you, John, for the question. Thank you, Baiju. And do we have any other questions to John regarding anything? Nope. Okay. So now that we are at the end, we don't have other topics. We can stay and discuss anything that you want. And before we do that, we can get the assignments for the next meeting. So who is going to be the next moderator with a nice radio voice? But I guess we need to. Can we stop recording now, or we record with the moderator and stuff earlier? This first time, Jasper. I don't know.
You can stop, I think.
Okay, so I need to find where to stop. Stop recording. I'm stopping the recording now. Thank you all.
Thank you.